Something wasn't right with these numbers. I stared at my computer screen, rubbing my lower back as my unborn daughter shifted restlessly. The quarterly financial reports from our Singapore office showed a pattern that made no sense, unless someone was deliberately obscuring transactions. I'm Rachel Chin, 34 years old, and until recently, I was the senior financial analyst at Global Dynamics Corporation, a position I'd held for 6 years. My specialty was identifying patterns in complex financial data, finding irregularities that others missed. It's what had earned me rapid promotions and the trust of our CFO, Marcus Thompson. At least, that's what I thought. "Rachel, you look troubled," Sarah whispered, peering over my cubicle wall. My closest friend at work, she'd been keeping an extra eye on me since I entered my 3rd trimester. "Is it the baby?" "No, it's these reports," I murmured, gesturing at my screen. "Look at these transfers. They're structured to appear routine, but the amounts don't match our typical operating patterns." Sarah frowned, her accounting background allowing her to quickly grasp what I was seeing. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 18 months, I replied, pulling up a spreadsheet where I'd been tracking the anomalies. Small discrepancies at first, easily dismissed as rounding errors or currency fluctuations. But they're getting bolder. This quarter alone, there's over $2.7 million that I can't properly trace. "Have you told Marcus?" I shook my head, one hand absently rubbing my swollen belly. "Not yet. I want to be absolutely certain before I raise any alarms. This kind of pattern usually indicates money laundering," Sarah finished quietly. "Rachel, be careful. Remember what happened to Jim in compliance when he started asking questions about the Dubai contracts." I remembered. Jim had been let go during a restructuring that somehow only affected his department. His replacement never followed up on his concerns. "I'll be fine," I assured her. "I'm due to start maternity leave in 3 weeks anyway. I just need to document everything properly first." That evening, I stayed late at the office, methodically copying files and taking screenshots of the suspicious transactions. My background in forensic accounting before joining Global Dynamics had taught me the importance of thorough documentation. Every anomaly was cataloged, every pattern noted, with timestamps and system logs to prove when I'd accessed the information. As I worked, my daughter kicked vigorously, as if sensing my tension. "Easy there, little one," I murmured. "Mommy just needs to finish this." I was so focused on my task that I barely noticed Marcus walking past my desk, stopping when he saw me still working. "Rachel, it's almost 8. You should be home resting." I quickly minimized my screens, smiling up at our CFO. In his mid-50s, Marcus had always projected a fatherly image, but something in his expression tonight made me uneasy. "Just wrapping up some quarterly analyses," I said casually. "Want everything organized before my leave starts." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on my computer screens. "Anything concerning?" "Nothing urgent," I lied smoothly. "Standard variance analysis." Good, he said. "Don't stay too late. Your health needs to come first right now." After he left, I quickly finished copying the last set of files to my personal encrypted drive. Something about Marcus's appearance had triggered my instincts. Why was he still here this late? His calendar had shown him in meetings off-site all afternoon. The next morning, I couldn't shake my sense of unease. I arrived early, planning to secure one final set of records, but my computer wouldn't boot up. System maintenance, our egg help desk, told me when I called. Several terminals are affected. should be resolved by afternoon. But when I tried to log into the financial system from Sarah's computer, my credentials were denied. "That's weird," Sarah said, watching me try again. "Want me to log in with my ID?" I started to answer, but a sharp pain cut through my lower abdomen. "Rachel?" Sarah's voice seemed to come from far away as another contraction hit. I gasped, "the baby has other plans." Everything happened quickly after that. Sarah called an ambulance while our office administrator notified my husband, James. By the time James met me at the hospital, I was already in active labor. 8 hours later, Emma Grace Chen came into the world, 3 weeks early, but perfectly healthy. In the joyful chaos of those first days with Emma, I almost forgot about the financial irregularities I'd discovered. Almost. But during late-night feedings, as I cradled my daughter, my mind kept returning to those numbers, to Marcus's odd behavior, to my mysteriously timed computer issues. I had just finished feeding Emma one morning, 18 days into my maternity leave, when my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Rachel," he said, his voice professionally sympathetic. "I hope you and the baby are doing well." "We are, thank you," I replied, suddenly alert despite my exhaustion. "I'm calling because we've had to make some difficult decisions regarding departmental structure. In reviewing our operations, we've determined that your position has become redundant." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I wasn't entirely surprised. "I see," I said calmly, years of professional training keeping my voice steady. "And this couldn't wait until I returned from maternity leave." "The changes are effective immediately," Marcus continued, ignoring my question. "Given your years of service, we're offering 8 weeks severance, contingent upon signing a standard release agreement. HR will email the paperwork shortly." "What about my maternity benefits?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Unfortunately, those terminate with your employment, but COBRA information will be included in your packet." After Marcus hung up, I sat in the nursery rocking chair, holding Emma close as I processed what had just happened. They'd waited until I was on leave, vulnerable, exhausted from newborn care, to terminate me. They probably expected me to sign whatever they sent quickly, grateful for any severance while dealing with a new baby. They didn't know I'd spent 15 years learning how financial criminals think, how they hide their tracks, how they silence potential threats. They didn't know that every suspicious transaction, every irregularity I'd found was safely documented and stored away from company servers. Most importantly, they didn't know that 2 days before going into labor, I'd sent a detailed letter to myself via certified mail, documenting my concerns and the exact locations of my evidence. A simple lawyer's trick, establishing a paper trail and timestamp that couldn't be erased. I looked down at Emma, peacefully sleeping in my arms. "Your mommy may be sleep-deprived," I whispered, "but she's not stupid." Opening my laptop one-handed, I began composing 2 emails. The first to Lisa Martinez, my former colleague at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The second to Robert Chen, my brother and one of the top forensic accounting partners at Deloitte. The next few weeks would be interesting indeed. Sarah called that evening, furious about my termination. "The official story is that your role was eliminated in a restructuring," she said, her voice tight with anger. "But they've already posted a job opening that looks suspiciously like your position with a different title." "Have they?" I said mildly, making notes. "That's interesting." "Rachel, this isn't right. It has to be related to what you found in those reports. Marcus has been acting strange ever since you left. having closed-door meetings with people from the Singapore office. And this morning, they announced a systems upgrade that's limiting access to historical financial records. They're covering their tracks, I said, unsurprised. Have they announced my replacement yet? That's another thing. They're bringing in someone from Singapore, David Wong. He worked with Marcus at his previous company. I remembered seeing Wong's name on several of the suspicious transactions. Perfect, I murmured. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. Right now, I'm going to feed my daughter, I replied. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, I start showing Global Dynamics exactly what happens when you underestimate a new mother who knows where all the bodies are buried. I spent the next few days reviewing my evidence while Emma napped. The pattern was clearer now that I could see it all together. The Singapore office was being used to launder money from somewhere, likely one of our Chinese manufacturing partners. Small amounts at first, disguised as routine business transactions, but growing bolder as they went undetected. Except I had detected them, and I had proof. The severance agreement arrived by email, along with a letter formally documenting my termination due to organizational restructuring. The terms were insulting: 8 weeks' pay in exchange for waiving all claims against the company, including any rights to report suspected wrongdoing to regulatory authorities. They really should have had better lawyers review that agreement. I was feeding Emma when Robert called. "Little sister," he said, his tone serious despite the affectionate greeting. "I've reviewed everything you sent. This isn't small-time creative accounting. We're looking at systematic money laundering, potentially tens of millions. How long have you known?" "I started noticing patterns about 3 months ago," I replied, adjusting Emma as she fussed. "But I didn't have concrete proof until just before going into labor." "And they fired you as soon as you went on leave. Convenient timing." "Very," I agreed. "What do you think?" "I think," Robert said slowly, "that Global Dynamics is about to learn why it's a bad idea to mess with my sister. Lisa's team at the FBI is very interested in your documentation. They're particularly intrigued by the connections to certain Chinese companies that have been under investigation." "How interested?" "Interested enough that they want to meet as soon as you're up for it. They're willing to come to you, given the baby." I looked down at Emma, now sleeping peacefully. "Tell them I'm available tomorrow afternoon. It's time to show Marcus that maternity leave doesn't mean I've lost my teeth." The next day, as I sat in my living room with 2 FBI financial crimes investigators and my brother, I realized that my termination might have been the best thing that could have happened. Free from corporate constraints, I could finally share everything I'd found. The real sophistication is in how they layered the transactions, I explained, pointing to a flowchart I'd created. "See how each transfer seems legitimate in isolation. It's only when you map them all together that the pattern emerges." Special Agent Martinez nodded appreciatively. "This is detailed work, Rachel. Most people would have missed these connections. Most people didn't spend 3 years tracking money launderers in Asia." I replied. I recognized the methodology. It's similar to cases I worked on before joining Global Dynamics. "Which they would have known if they'd actually checked your background," Robert added with a smile. "Their mistake," I agreed, shifting Emma in my arms as she stirred. "What happens next?" "We'll need to move carefully," Agent Martinez said. "We've been building a case against several of these Chinese companies for months. Your evidence could be the key to unraveling their entire network. But if Global Dynamics gets wind of the investigation too soon, they'll destroy evidence," I finished. "They're already trying." Sarah told me they're doing a systems upgrade that's limiting access to historical records. Classic covering of tracks, Robert muttered. We'll need to move fast. How would you like to handle this, Rachel? Agent Martinez asked. You could be a confidential informant, or we could take a more direct approach. I considered my options carefully. Part of me wanted to stay in the shadows, to let the FBI handle everything while I focused on my daughter. But another part, the part that had spent years building my career, that had worked through difficult pregnancies and morning sickness to earn my position, wanted justice. Direct approach, I decided. They tried to silence me by firing me when I was most vulnerable. I want them to know exactly who brought them down. Agent Martinez smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. We'll need you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. I raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Sign their severance agreement. What? Robert interjected. That would waive her rights to. No, I interrupted, suddenly understanding. It wouldn't. That clause about reporting to regulatory authorities, it's unenforceable. Dodd-Frank specifically protects whistleblowers regardless of any severance agreements. Exactly, Agent Martinez confirmed. Sign it. Let them think you're cowed and desperate. Meanwhile, we'll set up surveillance and start following the money trail you've uncovered. I looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully against my chest. How long do you need? Give us 2 weeks to get everything in place. Then we move. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. 2 weeks is perfect. Just long enough for them to think they've won. Just long enough for Marcus to get comfortable. Just long enough, I thought but didn't say, to remind Global Dynamics that they should have checked exactly what I knew before trying to discard me. That evening, I signed the severance agreement and emailed it back to HR. Then I composed one more email to Marcus himself. Thank you for the opportunity to work at Global Dynamics, I wrote, keeping my tone professional and slightly desperate. I understand that business needs change. I appreciate the severance offer and hope we can maintain a positive professional relationship. Let him think I was backing down quietly. Let him think maternal exhaustion and financial pressure had defanged me. In 2 weeks, he would learn just how wrong he was. 2 weeks passed quickly in the haze of newborn care. Emma settled into a routine, giving me precious hours between feedings to refine my documentation and coordinate with the FBI team. Sarah kept me updated on developments at Global Dynamics, each piece of news confirming that we were on the right track. They're rushing through the system upgrades, she texted one evening. It is working overtime to migrate financial records. Everyone's locked out of the archives until it's complete. Perfect. They were doing exactly what we'd anticipated, creating an electronic trail of their attempts to hide evidence. Each deleted file, each modified record would only strengthen the case against them. David Wong, my replacement, had arrived from Singapore and immediately begun implementing new protocols for financial reporting. According to Sarah, he called an all-hands meeting to announce that historical records were being standardized to match international formats. He keeps emphasizing that any discrepancies we notice are just conversion artifacts, Sarah reported. But Rachel, some of these numbers don't make sense even after conversion. Document everything, I told her, but don't raise any flags. Let them think everyone's accepting their explanations. The FBI surveillance was already yielding results. Agent Martinez called with updates every few days, her excitement growing as they mapped the network of transactions I'd uncovered. The money trail leads to 3 shell companies in the Cayman Islands, she told me during one call, all connected to a Chinese manufacturing conglomerate that's been on our radar for years. We've never been able to prove how they were moving funds to legitimate businesses until now. How much are we talking about? I asked, burping Emma after her morning feeding. Initial estimates suggest over 50 million in laundered funds over the past 2 years. But that's just what we can trace through global dynamics. There could be more through other companies. I whistled softly. No wonder they were so quick to push me out when I started noticing patterns. About that, Agent Martinez said, her tone shifting. We've been monitoring Marcus Thompson's communications. He's been in regular contact with executives at the Chinese company, discussing something they call Project Phoenix. Does that mean anything to you? I frowned, thinking back. There was a meeting about Project Phoenix just before I went on leave. Marcus said it was a potential joint venture, but the financial projections seemed optimistic. It's not a joint venture, Agent Martinez replied. Based on intercepted emails, it's their plan to acquire Global Dynamics outright, using funds from the same accounts you flagged. The pieces clicked into place. They're not just using Global Dynamics to launder money. They're trying to buy the company with laundered funds. Exactly. And based on the timeline we've uncovered, the deal is supposed to close next month. I thought about the implications. A Chinese company with known ties to money laundering would gain control of a respected American corporation, using illegal funds to do it. The potential for expanded financial crimes would be enormous. What's our next move? I asked. We're ready to act, Agent Martinez said, but we need one more piece of evidence. Proof that Global Dynamics leadership knowingly participated in the money laundering scheme. I smiled, remembering something I hadn't yet shared. Check your email in 5 minutes. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and retrieved a file I'd been saving for the right moment. 3 days before going into labor, I'd recorded a meeting with Marcus, standard practice for all our financial reviews. But this meeting had been different. These transfers from Singapore, I'd said, pointing to specific transactions. The amounts don't align with our normal business operations. Marcus had waved off my concerns. It's all been approved at the highest levels, part of our expansion strategy. But the documentation doesn't support that, I'd pressed. These look more like... Like what, Rachel? His tone had sharpened. Like money laundering, I'd said directly. The patterns match known techniques for disguising the source of funds. Marcus had stared at me for a long moment before responding. You're very observant, Rachel. Too observant. Some things are better left unnoticed, for everyone's sake. It wasn't just a smoking gun, it was a confession. I attached the recording to an email and sent it to Agent Martinez. Her response came within minutes. This is exactly what we needed. Be ready tomorrow morning. And Rachel, you might want to watch the financial news. The next day, I was feeding Emma when my phone exploded with notifications. Global Dynamics stock had been suspended from trading pending a major announcement. Sarah called moments later. The FBI just walked into the office, she said in a rushed whisper. Dozens of agents. They're seizing computers and files. Marcus is being led out in handcuffs. I switched on CNBC just in time to see the breaking news banner. Global Dynamics CEO and CFO arrested in international money laundering investigation. The reporters were scrambling to piece together the story, but the basic facts were already emerging. A months-long FBI investigation had uncovered a massive money laundering operation involving Global Dynamics and several Chinese companies. Arrests were being made on both sides of the Pacific. My phone rang again. Agent Martinez. Turn on the news, she said without preamble. Already watching, I replied. How's Marcus enjoying his new accessories? Not as much as he's going to enjoy what comes next. We're about to announce the role of a corporate whistleblower whose evidence broke the case. Ready to go public? I looked down at Emma, who gazed back with her father's dark eyes. More than ready. The next hours passed in a blur. My name hit the news cycles by noon. By dinner, every major financial publication had the story. New mother uncovered $1 million money laundering scheme during maternity leave. The details captivated everyone. The pregnant analyst who spotted financial irregularities, the company that tried to silence her by firing her during maternity leave, the evidence she'd gathered before giving birth. Forums lit up with discussions about corporate ethics and women in finance. James came home early, bringing champagne he insisted I deserved, even if I was still nursing. To my brilliant wife, he toasted, who brought down an international crime ring while caring for our newborn. But the real satisfaction came the next morning when Robert called with an update from his contacts at Global Dynamics. The board called an emergency meeting, he reported. They're in full panic mode. The stock is going to tank when trading resumes. Marcus and the CEO are looking at serious prison time. And guess what they found in Marcus's emails? Tell me. Explicit discussions about firing you because you were getting too close to their scheme. He specifically mentioned timing it during your maternity leave when you'd be too overwhelmed to fight back. I laughed. How'd that work out for him? Not great, especially since those emails make it a clear case of wrongful termination and pregnancy discrimination on top of everything else. The board wants to settle. They're offering full reinstatement, back pay, accelerated stock options, and a promotion to VP of Financial Compliance. Not interested, I said immediately. I have other plans. Those plans had begun taking shape during my late-night feedings with Emma. The FBI cases had reminded me how much I'd enjoyed forensic accounting, tracking down financial criminals, bringing justice to sophisticated fraud schemes. Actually, I said to Robert, I've been thinking about starting my own firm, specializing in forensic accounting and fraud detection. Think Deloitte might be interested in a partnership. Are you kidding? After this case? Every major firm in the country will be calling you. He was right. By the end of the week, I had meetings scheduled with 3 of the Big 4 accounting firms, all interested in establishing forensic accounting partnerships. The SEC had reached out about consulting on complex fraud investigations, and 2 universities wanted me to guest lecture on financial crimes detection. But the most satisfying call came from Lisa at the FBI. The U.S. Attorney's Office wants to talk to you, she said, about testifying against Marcus and the others. When? Next month. They're particularly interested in how you identified the money laundering patterns. And Rachel? They're very aware that you did most of this work while preparing for maternity leave. I smiled, watching Emma sleep in her bassinet beside my desk. Tell them I'm happy to help. I'll just need breaks for feeding the baby. Of course, Lisa laughed. We wouldn't want your daughter to miss watching her mother take down an international crime ring. The headlines continued for weeks. Global Dynamics stock plummeted when trading resumed. The Chinese company's executives were arrested in Hong Kong. David Wong was caught trying to flee to Malaysia with a hard drive full of incriminating documents. Marcus and the CEO were looking at decades in federal prison for money laundering, securities fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence I'd gathered, combined with the FBI's broader investigation had created an airtight case. Sarah called one evening, still processing everything that had happened. "The office is chaos," she reported. "Internal auditors everywhere, external investigators combing through every transaction. And you know what's crazy? They found even more suspicious patterns once they started really looking. This thing is bigger than anyone realized." "How's morale?" I asked, genuinely curious about my former colleagues. "Mixed. Some people are scared about their jobs. Others are angry they were deceived. But mostly, people keep talking about you. How you figured it all out while you were pregnant. How you gathered evidence even when you were about to give birth. You're like a legend now." I laughed. "Hardly. I just did my job." "While creating new life," Sarah insisted. "It's inspiring, Rachel. You showed everyone that becoming a mother doesn't make you less capable. If anything, it made you more formidable." Looking down at Emma, peacefully nursing as I reviewed case documents for the prosecution, I had to agree. Motherhood hadn't weakened me. It had made me fiercer, more determined to fight for what was right. 3 months after my terminated maternity leave, I sat in my new office, Emma asleep in a bassinet beside me. The wall held my framed FBI commendation and news articles about the case. My desk displayed a photo of Emma wearing a onesie Sarah had given her. My mom fights financial crime. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Martinez. "Marcus took a plea deal. 15 years minimum. Sending you the press release before it goes public." I smiled, remembering his dismissive tone during that termination call. He thought firing me during maternity leave would silence me, that a new mother would be too overwhelmed to fight back. He'd never considered that becoming a mother would make me fight harder. My new consulting firm was thriving, with a growing list of clients seeking fraud detection expertise. I'd hired Sarah away from Global Dynamics to be my operations director, and we were building a team of analysts who shared our passion for uncovering financial crimes. Best of all, I set my own schedule, allowing me to balance complex investigations with Emma's needs. The bassinet in my office raised some eyebrows at first, but my results spoke for themselves. If anything, having Emma nearby sharpened my focus. Every financial criminal we caught made the business world a little safer for her future. 1 year to the day after my termination, I received an email from Global Dynamics' new CEO. They were still rebuilding their reputation, struggling to restore trust with investors and clients. Would I consider consulting on their new compliance procedures? I drafted a simple reply. My consulting rate is $5,000 per hour, with a minimum engagement of 100 hours. Additional fees apply for any work conducted during traditional maternity leave hours. Emma, now crawling and babbling, pulled herself up on my desk as I hit send. I lifted her into my lap, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "Never let anyone tell you that motherhood makes you weak," I whispered. "It makes you unstoppable." The next generation of financial criminals would learn that lesson the hard way. They'd learn that underestimating a mother's strength, determination, and capacity for justice was a very expensive mistake. And if they didn't? Well, Emma would be old enough for show and tell soon. Maybe she'd like to visit Mommy's office and watch another corporate criminal learn that vital lesson. After all, the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's teaching our daughters that they never have to choose between motherhood and justice. They can deliver both, sometimes even during maternity leave. I still remember the exact moment I decided to throw away my perfect life. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was staring at spreadsheets in my corner office at Goldman Sachs, my untouched dinner growing cold beside me. another overpriced salad from the place downstairs. The same place I'd eaten at for the past 5 years. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Big news. Opening our 15th location next month. When will you finally join the family business? Time to stop playing with numbers and learn about real success. I looked at the photo he'd attached, him and my brother Anthony standing proudly in front of their newest Taste of Naples restaurant location. The same posed shot, the same forced smiles, the same mediocre Italian food that had somehow built my family's restaurant empire. Instead of responding, I took a bite of my cold salad and grimaced. Even bad Italian food would be better than this. My name is Sofia Russo, and I was living every Italian-American family's dream. Senior investment banker at Goldman Sachs at 28, making 7 figures a year, with a corner office overlooking Manhattan. My father should have been proud. Instead, all he saw was that I wasn't part of Russo Restaurants, the chain of Italian restaurants that had been our family's pride for 3 generations. Banking is for people who can't create anything real, he'd say at every family dinner. Anyone can move money around. It takes real skill to build a restaurant empire. What he never understood was that I did know about food. Real food, not the mass-produced pasta and sauce that made our family rich. Every vacation day I had, I spent traveling, eating at tiny local restaurants, learning about authentic cuisine. My apartment was filled with cookbooks, not finance textbooks, and every night I dreamed about cooking, not banking. But you don't walk away from Goldman Sachs, and you definitely don't walk away from it to start a food truck. At least, that's what everyone told me. That night, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the cold salad, maybe it was my father's text, or maybe it was just time. I opened my laptop and started writing my resignation letter. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office before the markets opened. "You're what?" Jake stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Sofia, you're on track for partner. 2 more years tops." I placed my resignation letter on his desk. "I'm opening a food truck." He started laughing, then stopped when he saw my face. "You're serious? You want to leave Goldman Sachs to sell hot dogs?" Not hot dogs, real Italian food. The kind my grandmother used to make before my father turned our family recipes into frozen pasta sauce. Jake leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. "Look, if this is about money, it's not about money." I cut him off. "It's about creating something real." As I walked out of his office, my phone started buzzing. News travels fast on Wall Street, and by the time I reached my apartment, my father was already calling. "Have you lost your mind?" His voice boomed through the speaker. "I just got a call from Arthur Goldman himself. A food truck? You're throwing your life away." I let him rant, walking into my kitchen where my grandmother's handwritten recipe book sat on the counter. I'd spent years collecting her recipes, testing them in secret, perfecting them while my family thought I was working late at the office. "Are you even listening to me?" my father demanded. "Yes, Papa, I hear you. But for once, I need you to hear me." I opened the recipe book to her signature dish, pasta alla nonna, made with a sauce that took 3 days to prepare. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm choosing my own path. By becoming a street vendor? Your brother runs 5 restaurants by himself. We have 15 locations. We're opening 3 more this year. That's success. No, that's mass production. When was the last time you actually cooked anything, Papa? When was the last time you made Nana's recipes the way she taught us? Silence. Then, times change. You can't make money cooking one pot of sauce at a time. Watch me. I hung up and opened my laptop. 5 years at Goldman had taught me more than just finance. I knew how to plan, how to analyze markets, how to build something from nothing. I'd helped launch million-dollar companies with less planning than I was putting into my food truck. First step, I emptied my savings account. $200,000, enough to buy a top-of-the-line food truck and have operating capital for a year. Next, I pulled up the business plan I'd been working on in secret for months. Nana's Kitchen. Authentic Italian street food, made fresh daily, using recipes that hadn't been changed for mass production. My phone kept ringing. My brother Anthony, my mother, my aunts and uncles. Everyone had an opinion about my mental breakdown. I ignored them all and started making calls of my own. By sunset, I'd found the perfect truck, a barely used kitchen on wheels that I could customize. By midnight, I'd secured all the necessary permits and licenses, and by dawn, I'd mapped out every food truck location in Manhattan, analyzing foot traffic patterns, lunch crowds, and competition. 1 week later, I stood in front of my shiny new food truck, now painted in deep red with Nana's Kitchen written in gold script. Inside was a fully equipped kitchen, better than what most restaurants had. My grandmother's recipe book sat on the counter, ready to guide me. "You're really doing this?" I turned to find my mother standing there, looking worried. She was holding a container of what smelled like my father's mass-produced marinara sauce. "I thought you might need this," she said, holding out the container. "For emergencies." I shook my head. "No emergencies, Mama. Only real food." I opened my grandmother's recipe book. Remember how Nana used to spend 3 days making her sauce? How the whole house would smell like basil and garlic? That was before we had 15 restaurants to run. She sighed. "Safia, your father built an empire by taking Nana's recipes and turning them into fast food." I started preparing for my first day, laying out fresh ingredients I had bought at dawn from local markets. He built what he wanted. Now it's my turn. She left without another word, taking her container of sauce with her. I watched her walk away, then turned back to my preparations. My first customers would be arriving in 2 hours. I'd love to say my first day was a tremendous success, that people lined up around the block for my authentic Italian food. The reality? I served exactly 12 customers, made $157, and had enough leftover food to feed an army. But those 12 customers, they came back the next day, and they told their friends. By the end of the first week, I had a small but loyal following. Office workers who were tired of the same chain restaurant lunches. Food enthusiasts who appreciated real Italian cuisine. People who could taste the difference between sauce that took 3 days to make and sauce that came from a factory. My father kept tabs on me through others, never visiting himself, but always asking about my little experiment. My brother Anthony drove by once, smirking when he saw me working alone in my truck. "Have fun playing chef," he called out. "When you're ready to admit this was a mistake, your office at Russo Restaurants is waiting." I ignored them all and focused on my food. Every morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. to start preparing. Every ingredient was fresh, every dish made to order. My customers didn't just get food. They got stories about the recipes, about my grandmother, about real Italian cooking. 3 months in, something unexpected happened. A food blogger discovered me. Her review went viral. "Forget everything you know about Italian food trucks. Forget everything you know about Italian restaurants. Nana's Kitchen is serving the most authentic Italian food in New York. and they're doing it from a truck. The next day, the line stretched around the block. I sold out by 1 p.m. Then came the write-up in the New York Times food section. Then eater. Then bon appetit. Suddenly, my little experiment wasn't so little anymore. I needed help. I hired 2 assistants, then 4. I added a second truck, then a third, each one serving the same authentic recipes, made fresh every day. 1 year after leaving Goldman Sachs, I had a fleet of 5 trucks and a central kitchen where we prepared our sauces and fresh pasta. My revenue was approaching $2 million annually, small compared to Russo restaurants, but every dollar earned without compromising quality. I was working harder than I ever had at Goldman, putting in 16-hour days, but for the first time in my life, I was creating something real, something that would have made my grandmother proud. Then came the day that changed everything. I was working in one of my trucks when I overheard 2 customers talking about Russo restaurants, about how the quality had gone down, about how the newest locations were struggling, about rumors of financial troubles. That night, I did what any good investment banker would do. I started digging. What I found confirmed the rumors. Russo Restaurants was expanding too fast, taking on too much debt. Their mass-produced approach was failing as customers demanded better quality. Their once mighty empire was crumbling. My father didn't know it yet, but his dream of 15 locations was about to become a nightmare. And I had a decision to make. I could watch my family's legacy crumble, or I could save it, on my terms. What I did next would change not just my family's restaurant empire, but the entire way we thought about food, family, and success. But first, I had a sauce to prepare. After all, the best revenge, like the best sauce, takes time to develop. And I had all the time in the world. The numbers didn't lie. Russo Restaurants was in serious trouble. Sitting in my small office above our central kitchen, surrounded by the aroma of slowly simmering sauce, I reviewed the financial reports I'd gathered. The empire my father had built was drowning in debt, bleeding customers, and running out of time. 5 new locations opened in the past year, each one performing worse than the last. Food costs skyrocketing because of their bulk buying contracts, customer satisfaction scores plummeting, and worst of all, a $50 million loan coming due in 6 months that they couldn't possibly pay. My phone buzzed. A text from Anthony. "Hey sis, how's the food truck life? Still playing chef?" I looked at the expansion plans spread across my desk, not just plans for more trucks, but for something bigger. Something that would change everything. Actually, I typed back, "I'm thinking about expanding. Want to get coffee?" We met at a small Italian cafe, not one of our family's restaurants. Anthony showed up in his designer suit, reeking of expensive cologne and desperation. He didn't know I could smell the fear on him. So, he smirked, stirring his cappuccino, finally ready to admit this food truck thing was a phase. "Your office is still empty." I took a sip of my espresso, properly made, unlike the automated machines in his restaurants. Actually, I want to talk about Russo Restaurants. Specifically, about the Bronx location's 42% drop in revenue last quarter. His cup clattered against the saucer. "How did you?" Or the 3 health code violations at the Brooklyn location? Or maybe the $50 million loan that's coming due? I pulled out a folder. I may have left Wall Street, Anthony, but I didn't forget how to read financial statements. "You've been spying on us?" "Public records, brother. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look." I leaned forward. "You're in trouble. Big trouble." He deflated slightly, his arrogance cracking. Papa says we can handle it. We just need to cut costs, maybe close a few locations. You need $50 million in 6 months, and your credit is maxed out. Cost cutting won't save you. I opened the folder, sliding over a proposal I'd spent weeks preparing. But I can. You? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. With what? Food truck money. With Nana's legacy fund. His laughter stopped. Never heard of it. You wouldn't have. I created it 3 months ago, using my Goldman Sachs connections. It's a private investment firm specializing in restaurant turnarounds. I watched his face as understanding slowly dawned. We have $2 billion in capital, and we're very interested in authentic Italian restaurants. Anthony's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the proposal. $2 billion. That's impossible. You've been running food trucks. I've been running food trucks, making connections, and building a reputation for quality food. Meanwhile, I've also been raising capital, analyzing failing restaurants, and preparing for this moment. I pulled out another document. This is a preliminary offer. We'll assume the debt, inject fresh capital, and restructure operations. Papa will never agree. He'd rather go bankrupt than give up control. Then you go bankrupt, and we'll buy the assets at auction. I stood up, leaving the documents on the table. You have 48 hours to discuss this with him. After that, we start buying up your debt on the secondary market. And trust me, Goldman Sachs remembers me very well. I left him sitting there, staring at the numbers that spelled the end of his world, or the beginning of a new one. That evening, my mother showed up at my central kitchen. I was in the middle of teaching new staff how to properly make Nana's sauce, just as she had taught me years ago. Your brother told us, she said quietly, watching me stir the sauce, about your investment firm, about the offer. I added a pinch of fresh basil to the pot. And your father is upset. Of course he is. His daughter who threw her life away now has the power to save or destroy his legacy. I handed her a spoon. Taste. She dipped the spoon in the sauce, and for a moment, I saw tears in her eyes. It tastes just like Mama used to make. That's because I make it exactly the way she taught us. Before Papa decided it was too expensive, too time-consuming to do it right, I turned down the heat, letting the sauce simmer. Every truck, every batch, every single day. We do it right. He's not a bad man, Sophia. He just wanted to build something big. I know, Mama, but he built it by sacrificing what made our food special. I wiped my hands on my apron. Now I'm offering to help him fix it. But it has to be my way. She nodded slowly. He wants to meet. Tomorrow night at the original restaurant. The original Russo restaurant, where it all began 40 years ago. Now a tired location in Little Italy, its once bright sign faded, its tables half empty most nights. I hadn't been there since leaving Goldman Sachs. Walking in the next evening felt like stepping back in time. The same red checkered tablecloths, the same pictures of Italy on the walls, the same menu that hadn't changed in decades. But now I could see what customers saw. A relic, not a destination. My father sat in his usual corner booth, an empty plate of pasta in front of him. He didn't stand when I approached. Investment firms. He spat the words like they tasted bad. Billions of dollars. This is how you respect our family's heritage. I slid into the booth across from him. I respect our heritage by making food the way Nana taught us. When was the last time you tasted your own sauce, Papa? Really tasted it. He pushed the plate away. We serve thousands of people every day. You can't make sauce 3 days at a time for that many people. Actually, you can. My central kitchen does it every day. Smaller batches, better ingredients, real cooking. I pulled out my proposal. And we can do it for all your restaurants. But things have to change. Change. You want to destroy everything I built. No, I want to save it. But not just the restaurants. I want to save what made us special. I opened my grandmother's recipe book, which I'd brought with me. Remember this? Remember how people used to line up around the block just to taste Nama's cooking? His eyes softened slightly at the sight of his mother's handwriting. That was different. Times were simpler. People still want real food, Papa. They're tired of mass-produced meals and artificial flavors. Look at my trucks. Lines every day, selling out by lunch. And we charge more than your restaurants because people will pay for quality. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the recipe book. The loan, he finally said, comes due in 6 months. You've tried every bank in the city. No one will refinance. I laid out the numbers. You're losing money on every new location. Food costs are up 60% because your suppliers know you can't negotiate. And your best customers are finding better options. Like food trucks, he asked bitterly. Like anywhere that still cares about quality. I pushed the proposal closer. I can save Russo restaurants. Keep the name, keep the legacy, but return to what made us great. Real Italian food, cooked with care. And I suppose you'll want to run everything. Yes. No point sugarcoating it. My firm will have controlling interest. You'll retain a significant stake, but operational decisions will be mine. He stood up abruptly, his face flushed. Never. I'll find another way. There is no other way, Papa. You have 6 months until the loan comes due. 5 months until suppliers start demanding cash on delivery. 4 months until you have to start closing locations. I stood too, matching his stance. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm offering you a choice. A choice? He laughed harshly. Between selling my life's work to my ungrateful daughter or going bankrupt. No. A choice between admitting you need help or watching everything you built get sold off piece by piece. I gathered my things. You have until Monday to decide. After that, we start buying your debt. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving him standing there among the empty tables and faded memories. Outside, one of my food trucks was parked nearby, the evening shift, serving dinner to a long line of customers. The next few days were silent. No calls from my father. No texts from Anthony. But I knew they were running the numbers. Realizing what I already knew, they had no choice. On Monday morning, my phone rang. The board wants to meet, Anthony said, his voice tight, to discuss your proposal. The meeting was set for Wednesday at their corporate headquarters, a fancy office building that had seemed so impressive when I was young. Now it just looked like another monument to prioritizing size over substance. I arrived early, dressed in chef's whites instead of a business suit. Let them see who I really was, not who they wanted me to be. The boardroom was full. My father, Anthony, the other executives who had helped build and nearly destroy our family's legacy. They all watched as I set up my presentation. But first, I had servers bring in lunch. Dishes from my food trucks, made fresh that morning. Before we discuss numbers, I said, I want you to taste something. The sauce was made exactly how Nana taught us. 3 days, fresh ingredients, no shortcuts. They ate in silence. I saw the recognition in their eyes, the memory of what our food used to taste like. before mass production and cost-cutting destroyed it. My father put down his fork, wiped his mouth, and looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before: respect. "Now," I said, pulling up the first slide of my presentation, "let's talk about how we save Russo restaurants." What happened next would change not just our family's business, but the entire way America thought about Italian food. But that's not where the story ends. Because sometimes saving something means completely rebuilding it. And I was just getting started. The transformation of Russo restaurants began at 4 a.m. on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after the board meeting. I stood in the kitchen of our original location, surrounded by my best food truck chefs and a very skeptical kitchen staff. "Today," I announced, holding up my grandmother's recipe book, "we learned to cook again." The executive chef, who'd been running this kitchen for 20 years, crossed his arms. "We know how to cook." "No," I corrected him gently. "You know how to heat up pre-made sauce and boil factory pasta. Today you learn to make real Italian food." Over the next 12 hours, we made sauce the way Nana had taught me. Fresh tomatoes, not canned. Herbs picked that morning. Slow cooked, stirred by hand, tasted every hour. The kitchen staff watched, skeptical at first, then increasingly interested as the aroma filled the air. By dinner service, we had one batch of real sauce ready. I made an announcement to the dining room. "Tonight, we're offering a special, pasta alla nonna, made from my grandmother's original recipe. Same price as our regular pasta, but limited quantity." We sold out in 2 hours. The next day, the line stretched around the block. But this was just one restaurant. We had 14 others to fix and a mountain of debt to deal with. My father, surprisingly, became my strongest ally. After that first night, after seeing customers' reactions to real food, something changed in him. He started coming to the kitchen early, watching us cook, even rolling up his sleeves to help. "I had forgotten," he admitted one morning, stirring a pot of sauce, "how it used to be, how Mama did it." Anthony was a harder sell. "This is inefficient," he complained during a management meeting. "We're spending 3 times as much on ingredients, 5 times as much on labor, and charging twice as much per dish." I cut in, sliding over the latest numbers. With full dining rooms and lines out the door. The transformation wasn't easy. We closed 3 underperforming locations, converted 2 others into training centers. I brought in my food truck teams to train restaurant staff, teaching them not just recipes, but the philosophy behind real Italian cooking. Every location got a complete makeover. Out went the checkered tablecloths and cheap wine glasses. In came elegant simplicity, open kitchens where customers could watch their food being made, wine lists curated by actual sommeliers. But the biggest change was in our central kitchen, or rather, its elimination. No more mass production, I announced 6 months into the transformation. Each restaurant makes its own sauce, its own pasta, its own everything. Fresh, daily, no shortcuts. The food critics noticed. The first review came from the New York Times. "Russo Restaurants has undergone a miraculous transformation. What was once a chain of mediocre Italian restaurants has become a collection of authentic trattorias, each offering food that would make any Italian grandmother proud." Michelin stars followed. First one restaurant, then another. Our prices went up, but customers didn't complain. They were getting real food, cooked with care and passion. 1 year after taking control, we had fewer locations, but triple the revenue. The debt was paid off, our suppliers were happy, and our staff turnover had dropped to nearly zero. Turns out people like working in kitchens that actually cook. But the real moment of triumph came during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. For the first time in years, the whole family was gathered around the table. My mother had cooked, really cooked, not just heated up pre-made food. "I have something to show you," my father said after dinner. He led me to his study, where a new frame hung on the wall next to his business awards. Inside was a food truck permit, my original one, from when I first started. "I was wrong," he said quietly, "about everything, about you." I hugged him, smelling the familiar scent of garlic and basil that now clung to his clothes just like it had clung to Nana's. "We were both right, Papa. You built something big. I just helped make it good again." 2 years after the takeover, Russo Restaurants had become Russo and Daughter, my condition for the final rebranding. We had 10 locations, each one unique, each one excellent. The waiting list for dinner reservations was months long. My food trucks? Still running, still popular. I kept them as our research and development kitchens, testing new recipes, training new chefs, keeping us connected to the streets where real food culture lags. Anthony finally came around when he realized that quality meant both better profits and more respect in the food world. He now runs our chef training program, teaching new cooks the difference between making food and making memories. Last month, a young chef from our newest location asked me why we spend so much time and money doing things the hard way. I took her into the kitchen, showed her how to stir the sauce, just like Nana taught me. "Feel that?" I asked as she stirred. "That's not just sauce. That's tradition. That's family. That's love." She nodded, understanding, filling her eyes as the aroma of slowly simmered tomatoes and fresh herbs surrounded us. Later that evening, I found my father in the same kitchen, teaching another young chef how to make pasta by hand. His sleeves were rolled up, flour dusting his once immaculate suit. "You know," he said when he saw me, "I spent 30 years trying to make this business bigger. You spent 2 years making it better." I picked up a handful of flour, felt its texture, just like Nana taught me. "Why not both?" He smiled, really smiled, the way he used to when I was little and helped him in the kitchen. Why not both indeed? We're expanding again, but differently this time. Each new location has to earn its right to exist by maintaining our standards. No shortcuts, no compromises, no mass production. Every sauce made fresh, every pasta rolled by hand, every dish cooked with pride. The investment firm that started it all, still going strong, still transforming restaurants, still proving that quality and profit can coexist. But that's not what I'm most proud of. Last week, I found my grandmother's recipe book in the kitchen of our original location. It was open to her sauce recipe, the pages stained with tomato and oil, the way a well-used cookbook should be. But it wasn't just her handwriting anymore. There were notes in the margins from our chefs, little tweaks and observations, the recipe evolving while staying true to its roots. That's when I knew we'd succeeded, not because of the awards or the profits or the waiting lists, but because we'd created something my grandmother would have been proud of. My father joined me in the kitchen that evening, putting on an apron like he does every day now. "Ready to make the sauce?" he asked. I smiled, reaching for the tomatoes. "Always, Papa, always." The food trucks still park outside our restaurants sometimes, a reminder of where this revolution started. And every morning, when I smell the sauce starting to simmer, I think about that scared girl who left Wall Street with a dream of doing food right. Turns out you can go home again. You just have to be willing to cook up some changes along the way. Last night, a food critic asked me if I ever regret leaving Wall Street. I led her into our kitchen, showed her the sauce bubbling in huge pots, the pasta being rolled by hand, the chefs working with pride and passion. Banking taught me about numbers, I told her. But this taught me about value. And those are very different things. She took another bite of her pasta, closed her eyes in bliss, and nodded. She understood. Because in the end, success isn't just about how much money you make. It's about staying true to what matters. In my case, good food and family legacy. Sometimes those things seem to conflict, but with enough determination, and maybe a food truck or two, you can find a way to make them work together. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some sauce to stir. After all, the best traditions are the ones you practice every day. And somewhere, I know, Nana is smiling.